The Christmas bonus check was sitting on the kitchen counter when I got home, and my husband was grinning like he'd just won the lottery, which, honestly, he kind of had. $280,000, he said, sliding it toward me like he was dealing a card. Before taxes, but still. I picked it up, looked at the number, felt something warm move through my chest. Not greed, just relief. We'd been stretched thin for 2 years while he climbed toward this moment, and I'd quietly rearranged my entire freelance schedule around his travel, his client dinners, his need for the house to be calm and clean and functional when he walked through the door at 9 p.m. looking exhausted. "Does this mean we can finally talk about the kitchen renovation?" I asked. He laughed, took the check back, and said, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." I should have heard it then. That small, careful pulling back, but I was already thinking about cabinet handles. "My name is Vivian. I'm 32. I do brand consulting, mostly small businesses, some mid-sized companies going through rebrands. It's good work, and I'm good at it, but it's project-based, which means some months I invoice $40,000 and some months I invoice 8. My husband works in corporate finance. His income is a river. Mine is rain. We got married 4 years ago, and from the beginning we kept separate accounts. His idea, and at the time I thought it was mature. Modern. We split the mortgage down the middle, split utilities, split groceries. I paid for the cleaning service we hired twice a month because he said it was my preference. I paid for the CSA box from the local farm. I paid for the subscription to the meal planning app I used to organize our weekly dinners because, again, my preference. He paid for streaming services and the gym membership we both used. I told myself it was fair because the number on paper looked even. We were both paying half of everything. What I didn't put on paper was this. I was also cooking 4 nights a week, coordinating the schedules of 2 households. His parents visited often, my in-laws even more. I handled every birthday gift, every holiday card, every follow-up call after a family member had surgery. I scheduled the pest control visits, the HVAC maintenance, the gutter cleaning. When his work friends came over for dinner parties, because entertaining mattered for his career, I spent 2 days planning menus, sourcing ingredients, cooking, styling the table, and then quietly washing everything afterward while he stood in the kitchen doorway with a drink, telling everyone what a great cook I was. And I smiled because what else do you do? The Christmas party announcement came in early November. My husband's company hosts a big client dinner every December, 40-plus people catered at a rented event space downtown. It's a thing. A capital T thing that his firm cares about enormously because it's essentially a relationship maintenance event for their biggest accounts. That year, his manager called him directly and asked if we'd be willing to host a pre-dinner gathering at our house. Cocktails, appetizers, a warm and welcoming home base, before everyone moved to the venue. About 30 people. My husband was thrilled. "It's a huge deal," he told me. "They don't ask just anyone." I asked what he had in mind for the food and drinks. "Whatever you usually do," he said. "You always make it look so easy." I nodded, started making a list in my head. Then, 3 days later, he slid a piece of paper across the kitchen counter, the same counter where the bonus check had sat, and said, "I was thinking we split the cost of the party. Since it's our home, you know, team effort." I looked at the paper. He'd done a rough estimate, catering or home-cooked food for 30, bar setup, florals, rentals if needed. His number at the bottom was around $4,000 total, split 2 ways. $2,000 each, he said. I put the paper down. "You received a $280,000 bonus 6 weeks ago." "That's separate," he said. "That's my money. This is a household expense." I want to say I argued. I want to say I put my foot down right there in that kitchen in November with the first snow of the season just starting outside the window. But I didn't. I said, "Okay, Let me think about the menu. And then I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and started a spreadsheet. I want to explain what the spreadsheet became because it started as something small. At first, it was just the party costs. I was tracking what I was spending so I could prove my half was accurate. Florals, charcuterie components, the good cheese, wine 2 cases, sparkling water, rented cocktail tables. But then I kept going. I added a tab. Labor costs. I looked up what a private chef charges per hour in our city, $45 to $90 depending on experience. I was somewhere in the middle. I have a culinary certificate from a program I did in my mid-20s before I pivoted to consulting. I gave myself 60. I looked up what a party planner charges. Event stylists. Personal assistants who handle household coordination. Then I went back further. Not just the Christmas party, the whole year. Every dinner party I'd hosted for his clients or colleagues. Every holiday I'd organized. Every weekend I'd spent driving to 3 different stores because he wanted a specific wine and the first 2 places were out of stock. Every birthday gift I'd researched, purchased, wrapped, and shipped on his behalf to people I'd never met. The dental appointment I'd rescheduled twice because it kept conflicting with things he needed me present for. I gave each category a rate. I was conservative. I didn't inflate. I used real market numbers. By the time I was done, I had been providing to our household approximately $43,000 in unpaid domestic and administrative labor over the course of our 4-year marriage. Per year. That's $172,000 total that had never appeared in any budget spreadsheet, any conversation about splitting things fairly, or any acknowledgement from my husband that running a household is work, actual work, that someone was performing while he sat in his office building someone else's net worth. I saved the file, named it something boring, went downstairs and made dinner. The party was on a Friday in mid-December. I had been planning it for 3 weeks. I made everything from scratch. Not because I had to, but because I had decided to do exactly what he'd asked. Team effort, my half. I would deliver my half precisely, completely, and without complaint. I spent my $2,000, not a penny more. The florals were beautiful. Low arrangements, greenery, white candles. The food was good, really good. Smoked salmon on blinis, a baked brie with fig jam, a charcuterie spread that took me 4 hours to assemble properly, 2 past trays of hot appetizers I timed to come out of the oven at intervals so they'd always be warm. His colleagues arrived at 6:30. The house looked exactly like what it was, a home where someone had spent days making everything look effortless. By 7, 3 people had asked me who had catered it. "Oh, I made everything," I said. "You made all of this yourself?" I did. My husband appeared at my elbow, beaming. "She's incredible, right? I married a genius." I smiled at his colleagues. "He's very lucky," I said, and I meant it differently than it sounded. At 7:45, I excused myself to the kitchen under the pretense of refilling a tray. I stood at the counter for a moment, listening to 30 people enjoy the party I had spent 3 weeks and $2,000 building. I thought about the spreadsheet upstairs. Then I went back out and smiled for another hour. Things got quiet after the holidays. In January, my husband started talking about the next phase. He'd been offered a position at another firm, bigger, more prestigious, more demanding. It would mean more travel, longer hours, and for the first year at least, a salary freeze while he proved himself in the new role. "The bonus structure is better long-term," he said. "But we'd need to tighten up in the short term." I asked what that looked like. "Maybe you take on more clients. Stabilize your income a little more consistently. And we keep the 50-50 split. Obviously, it's been working well." I looked at him across the kitchen table. "Has it?" I said. It wasn't a question, but he answered it like one. "I mean, yeah? We've been good about it." "Fair." I got up, went upstairs, and came back down with my laptop. I turned it to face him. This is a record, I said, of the work I'd been doing in this household for the past 4 years that we've never discussed as having any financial value. He leaned forward and squinted at the screen. I watched his face change as he scrolled. Vivian, I want you to get to the total, I said. Scroll down. He got there. He was quiet for a long time. This isn't how you calculate. I used market rates, I said. Conservative ones. You can Google any of those line items. We're a team, he said. You can't bill your husband. I'm not billing you, I said. I'm showing you that the split we've been doing for 4 years is not 50-50. It has never been 50-50. It has never been 50-50. You pay half the mortgage and half the groceries. I pay half the mortgage, half the groceries, and $172,000 of invisible labor that kept this household running so that you could focus entirely on your career. He closed the laptop, pushed it back toward me. I think you're overcomplicating this. I think, I said, that you've been comfortable not seeing it. We didn't fight that night. We went to separate sides of the house and didn't speak until morning. But something had shifted, and we both knew it. The kind of shift where the floor doesn't crack all at once. It just separates, quietly, along a line that was always there. I called my sister the next day. She listened to the whole thing without interrupting, which is rare for her. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "What do you want to happen?" I'd been asking myself the same question for 48 hours. I want him to see it, I said. I want him to actually understand that I've been working this whole time, and nobody, including me, has been treating it like work. And if he doesn't? I didn't answer. She said gently, "You know you might have to decide something bigger here." My husband came home that evening with what I recognized as his concession face, slightly softened, eyes a little careful. "I've been thinking," he said. I let him talk. He said he understood I'd felt undervalued. He said maybe the arrangement could be adjusted. He offered to cover more of the household expenses going forward, a larger percentage, and to appreciate what you contribute more. He said it like he was approving a budget amendment. Not once did he say, "I didn't see how much you were doing." I took it for granted. "I'm sorry," he said. "So can we move past this?" I looked at him. 4 years of dinners and spreadsheets and client parties and birthday cards I signed with both our names. "I need to think about what I want," I said. He nodded like this was a reasonable quarterly review. "Of course. Take the weekend." I didn't take the weekend. I called a family law attorney on Thursday morning, described our situation, and made an appointment for the following week. I want to be clear, I did not go into that appointment wanting a divorce. I went in wanting information. I wanted to understand what 4 years of marriage looked like on paper, legally, in a state where we had separate finances and an informal arrangement that existed nowhere except my own very detailed spreadsheet. What I learned surprised me. My attorney, a woman in her 50s who had clearly heard every version of this story, told me that documentation matters enormously, that a record of contributions to the household, to a spouse's career advancement, to the maintenance of a lifestyle that supports one partner's professional trajectory, can be presented in equitable distribution discussions. She looked at my spreadsheet and said, "This is actually very well organized." I said I used to do brand consulting for small businesses and I understood the value of clean data. She said, "Keep updating it." I did. I won't walk through every detail of the next 6 months, not because they don't matter, but because the emotional texture of a marriage ending is something that lives in small moments. A coffee mug in the wrong cabinet, a side of the bed that starts to feel too large, the particular silence of a house where 2 people are coexisting rather than living together. What I'll say is this: we tried. My husband proposed a post-nuptial restructuring, an actual document, which his firm's in-house counsel helped him draft, outlining a new split that acknowledged household contributions. I read it carefully. It acknowledged shared domestic responsibilities in language so vague it could have described two college roommates. I sent it back with notes. He sent it back revised. We went back and forth for 3 months. In the end, it wasn't the money that made me decide. It was a Tuesday in April when I came downstairs at 11 p.m. because I couldn't sleep and found him at the kitchen table on his laptop, completely absorbed in something for work. He didn't hear me come in. I stood in the doorway for a moment watching him. He looked exactly the same as he always had. Focused, efficient, contained. And I realized I had organized my entire adult life around keeping that man's world smooth and quiet so he could sit at that table and concentrate, and he had accepted it as the natural order of things, not cruelly. That's what made it so hard. Not with malice. Just with the quiet, unexamined certainty that this was how things were supposed to go. I went back upstairs, opened my laptop, wrote him a letter, not the legal kind, just a real one. Told him what I'd understood in the doorway, told him I didn't think he was a bad person, told him I thought we had both agreed, without saying so, to a version of our lives that had worked for him and quietly hollowed me out. Left it on the kitchen counter in the morning before he woke up. When I got back from my 9 o'clock client call, he had read it. He was sitting at the table and his eyes were red. "I didn't know you felt this way," he said. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." The divorce was finalized 8 months later. In the equitable distribution, my attorney presented this spreadsheet as part of a broader argument about my contributions to my husband's career advancement and our shared household. His attorneys pushed back. There were 3 mediation sessions. In the end, I received 40% of his vested stock options from the past 4 years, a lump sum that reflected my documented contributions to our joint lifestyle and my full share of the equity in our home. It wasn't everything. My attorney thought we could have pushed for more, but I was 32 years old and I wanted it to be over more than I wanted to win. What I kept, more than the money, was the spreadsheet. Not as a grudge. Not as proof that I'd been wronged. I kept it because it was the first time in 4 years that I had looked at my own work. The real work, the invisible work, the work no one scheduled or paid or promoted anyone for, and written down, "This has value. This counts. This is worth something." I have a new apartment now, on the 3rd floor of a building with good light and a kitchen I painted the color I wanted without asking anyone. I still do brand consulting. I've taken on 3 new clients since the divorce was finalized, and I've raised my rates twice because I understand now, in a way I didn't before, the specific cost of undervaluing your own work. My sister asked me recently if I regretted it. The marriage, not the divorce. I thought about it honestly. "No," I said. "I think I needed to learn what my time was worth. I just wish I'd learned it sooner." She laughed and said that was a very consultant answer. Maybe it is, but I've been staring at the numbers long enough now to know that some lessons only arrive once you're willing to actually write them down. I used to think the hardest part of my marriage was the work. The cooking, the planning, the tracking of 100 small tasks that kept everything running. But looking back now, I think the hardest part was actually the silence around it. The way I kept doing it without naming it, without accounting for it, without ever once sitting down and saying, "This is labor, and labor has value." What I did with that spreadsheet wasn't revenge. I want to be clear about that. It was honesty. For the first time in 4 years, I was being honest about what I had given and what had been taken without acknowledgement. Not maliciously, but casually, in the way we take for granted the things that are always just there. There's a version of this story where I stayed quiet, where I smiled at the Christmas party, washed the last glass, closed the laptop, and kept absorbing the cost. I know that version well because I lived it for a long time. And I think the reason I finally stopped wasn't anger. It was something quieter than that. A kind of self-respect that arrived slowly, the way mornings do. You don't notice the light until the room is already different. What Vivian had to learn, what I had to learn, is that integrity isn't only about how you treat other people. It's about how honestly you see yourself. Whether you're willing to look at your own life and say, I have been worth more than this arrangement suggests, whether you have the courage to name that without apology. This spreadsheet was intelligence in the most literal sense, not academic intelligence, not the kind that gets framed on a wall, but practical clarity, the ability to look at a situation without the fog of emotion and ask, what is actually happening here? Who is carrying what? And does the story we've been telling ourselves match the numbers on the page? When I ran those numbers, the answer was no. It had never been no. It had just been unexamined. And then there's the part that took the most out of me. Continuing. Going to the attorney. Going back to the table again and again through 3 mediation sessions when I would have given almost anything for it to just be over. That kind of endurance isn't dramatic. Nobody writes songs about it. It's just showing up, tired, and doing the next thing anyway because you've decided your own life is worth finishing what you started. My sister asked if I regretted the marriage. I don't. I think I needed 4 years inside that particular arrangement to understand something I couldn't have learned any other way, that invisible work is still work, that calm acceptance is not the same as consent, and that the most important invoice I ever sent wasn't to my husband, it was to myself. A quiet acknowledgement, long overdue, that my time had always been worth writing down.